On behalf of the Inter-Islands Chevra Kadisha and Kokua, we are really grateful that you are joining us today. And we want to thank our presenter, Blue Hawkins, for sharing her knowledge and her mana'o today with us. I also really want to acknowledge Alice Lockman for her tireless efforts with Chevra Kadisha and Kokua and all of the amazing work that she does. And then the fabulous behind the scenes tech team at Kokua, which is Hope and Maka. So thank you very much. My name is Jeanette Kojane. I am the executive director of Kokua. I know that we are all deeply impacted by the ongoing tragedies at this time. And personally, I really have trouble comprehending all that is going on, and I have found myself often in tears, especially over the last week. However, last Monday, when we talked to Blue, she asked to carry on, keep the presentation for today. So I am so glad that all of us are here today as we strive to care well for those in our community. So today's talk will certainly help professionals as well as others across Hawaii and other parts of the world, as we learn how to get better care for people with serious illness and their loved ones. So for those of you that don't know Kokua yet, we are a statewide coalition. We are committed to improving care for people with serious illness, and we really strive to help people who may be facing serious illness and their loved ones to understand decisions that they may need to make, and then to find the appropriate resources and care in our community. So for those who aren't yet members, please join our newsletter and find out what we're doing. And we really hope that this webinar will spark other conversations and other sessions. So if you would like to learn more about Jewish traditions and practices, please let me know. And if you want to be part of this conversation of improving care, especially for Jewish people in the community, for the loved ones, for their caregivers, please let me know, and we'll have that available towards the end. I know I speak for all of us in the community that we want to do our best to care well for anyone. And you can see anyone in the community. We want to support patients. We want to support loved ones. So you can see by the attendance today, there's a lot of interest in helping to better serve the Jewish community. And we look forward to learning and working together. So the way we're going to do this today, if you have questions and things that come up, please put it into the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat, and then I can ask Blue the questions, and then that we can see what comes up. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Blue Hawkins. We have had the honor and privilege of working with Blue over a number of years. And she is a natural death care advocate, educator, community organizer, cemeterian, which was a new word for me, author, and poet. In 2022, she co-created and launched two 12-module courses on the subject of natural burial in partnership with Lee Webster, the Green Burial Masterclass, and with David Zinner, Jewish and Green Cemetery Management for the 21st Century. As Gamliel Institute graduate and past faculty, and now among the founders of JADE, Jewish Association for Death Education, and the Ben Zakkai Institute, Blue provides education and training to both Jewish and secular audiences internationally, and is a passionate advocate for environmentally sustainable and culturally sensitive burial practices. So mahalo nui loa for coming and sharing with us today, Blue.
Mahalo, Jeanette. It is really such an honor and a privilege to be here. You have no idea, and I won't tell you all the reasons why, but just take it into your hearts that this is a very special treat for me to be here today. So I want to begin by personally thanking each one of you for taking the time in your busy lives to attend this presentation. Special recognition is, of course, due to Alice Lachman and Jeanette Kojane for identifying a need and reaching out, and for Hope Young and Marcus for coming on board to put this presentation together and support us on a tech level. From here in California afternoon, I recognize that many of you are on your lunch breaks. To respect your time, this is going to be a brief introduction of a few key points to get things started. There are handouts that will be made available for further study, intended to give you a more in-depth perspective, or at least provide some clues where to find more information. There is one piece in particular that I would like to draw your attention to. It is copied from a recent listserv posting by Rabbi Chaplain Lori Klein, directly addressing the challenges faced by so many of us, particularly in institutional settings at this time. I urge you to read it as soon as you can. Jeanette will be our moderator for this session. She will be helping me stay on track with time and monitor the chat. So if you have questions or requests for clarification, please just drop them into the chat and Jeanette will interject as appropriate. If you have special requests for addressing a topic, let's see if we have time today. If not, you can reach out to either Jeanette or Alice. Hopefully this session today is just a beginning. Thanks to a donation obtained by the Chevra Kadisha of Hawaiʻi and Kokua and the Kokua of Bristol Hospice, who has generously agreed to send them out, we are able to provide these wonderful booklets. Simply call Bristol Hospice's main line and give them your mailing address. A volunteer or bereavement team member will help you to get your copy of the book. Although our topic for today is mostly upstream from death and mourning, even at this stage, there is a lot of information to help you with understanding the Jewish way of dying, death, and bereavement. The book is a convenient, easy to access list of next steps to help you orient others in their decision-making process. I also want to acknowledge the teachers who have so profoundly influenced my heart mind, not only during the time I lived in Hawaii, but to this very day, most notably Morna Nalamaku Simeona, Puilani Kanaka Ole Kanahele, Antinona Beamer, Al Laganero, Uluvehi Guerrero, and Norman P. Inaya. In putting this presentation together, I've been reminded of the two-volume set Nana Ike Kumu, first published in 1972 by Mary Kavena Pukui and her colleagues under the auspices of Queen Liliuokalani Children's Center for the purpose of assisting non-natives in better understanding and serving the Hawaiian population. So this presentation today takes inspiration from that dedication in assisting healthcare professionals statewide in better understanding and serving the people of Jewish descent living in Hawaii at their time of need. There is a growing trend in online Chevra Kadisha education to commence by offering a space for dedications. It is a simple yet heart-opening practice of pausing for a moment for each of us who is so moved to type into the chat the names and dedications for our learning together today. Instead of putting mine in the chat, I will model this practice by speaking it now. I dedicate my learning today to the memory of the two grandchildren my extended family lost in Israel last week, who died because they ran to help instead of running for cover. So if you have dedications that you want to please feel free to put those into the chat now. So, and now, Jeanette, do you have anything to add before we proceed?
No, just crying over here. Thanks. I would say, Holly Blue, that maybe you just begin.
Many years ago, someone gave me this magnet. I love it so much, it has been on my refrigerator ever since. Through two moves, 3 refrigerators. It's still with me. But I ask you, who face thresholds with your patients and clients every day, in the face of life-threatening illness, what does this mean to you? May you live all the days of your life. The poet Emily Dickinson wrote, "Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without words and never stops at all." How do we live all the days of our life when life itself is slipping through our fingers? How do you provide a space where that thing with feathers can continue to perch and sing? If we were a smaller group today, we might spend a few minutes in breakout rooms or talk about this question in a larger group. But instead, let's rely on the chat again. So take a few moments to reflect, and if you're moved, share in the chat. How do you live all the days of your life? How do we? So the title of this presentation today uses the Hebrew word Nechama. So what is Nechama? Like Hawaiian, Hebrew is a rich and deeply textured language. Like Hawaiian, it often takes several words in English to approximate a translation. As a word that has entered the common vernacular among English-speaking Jews, Nechama typically means comfort and consolation. Interestingly enough, if you remove the letter nun, that N sound, from the root letters, you end up with the word cham, which means warm. The phrase, "I'm sorry for your loss," offers a heartfelt transmittal of Nechama. Interestingly enough, when I went to prepare this slide, it took me a long time to find something that actually talked about a definition, because Nechama and Nachum are such familiar children's names that's what all of the websites focused on. In thinking about this presentation, it occurred to me that the Jewish tradition has particular iconic blessing prayers, which represent the stages of illness, approaching the threshold of death, and the transition from this lifetime into what is known in Hebrew as Olam Haba, the world to come. Those stages are the Misha Berach, a prayer for those in need of healing for both the being and the body. A Vidui, which is a prayer for forgiveness and letting go prior to death. And El Malei Rachamim, a prayer for the elevation of the soul of the one who is in the process of departing. And then there's the mourners Kaddish, which is a celebration of the divine presence and does not speak of death, but is recited on behalf of the one who has died. So let's take a look at these stages. The word Hebrew means one who blesses, but who is blessing? And to whom is the blessing being bestowed? This prayer begins, Mishaberach Avotenu v'Imotenu, may the one who blessed our ancestors. The person delivering the prayer is in essence praying that God, whose track record is then recited reaching all the way back to our first ancestors, that the prayer is directed blessing and healing towards the one specifically named in the prayer, in the Pule. It's a little subtle, but we're really not blessing that person that we show up to bless. We are blessing God to have the energy to make this blessing in a particular way. Notice that in this prayer, we begin by opening a pathway for divine Shefa, the flow of blessing, from source to the one in need of healing. Only then do we make our request, our prayer, that source be filled with compassion, that compassion would flow upon the one for whom we are praying, so that their health be restored and their strength be revived. And with yet another layer of specificity, that it happens swiftly and to the extent of a complete renewal of body and spirit. In Hebrew, we say refuat hanefesh, refuat haguf, healing of the spirit and healing of the body. Compassion, the English word used in this translation, can only approximate the original Hebrew word in the blessing in its original Hebrew, which is rachamim. Rachamim is a plural form of a noun, which is translated into English as compassion. But notice that the word rachamim comes from the Hebrew word rechem, meaning womb. We're looking at God's compassion in a very womb-like, enfolding, nurturing fashion. It is the boundarylessness love of the mother for her child, of the parent for their child, a love that stems from the deep knowledge that the child is both of her and not of her. This is our relationship with God. Then, near the end of life, is the time for the vidui, the forgiveness and letting go. Often referred to as a final confession, the vidui traditionally is said at the deathbed. Although basically the same in wording and intent, the vidui takes slightly different forms in the various streams of Jewish thought and customs. It can be said on someone's behalf if they have no longer can speak. A proxy does not need to be clergy or a chaplain, but someone who can hold the intentionality of the prayer for the sake of the one who is departing. A different form of the vidui is recited communally each year on Yom Kippur, the Jewish Day of Atonement. Some people say another version each night before they go to sleep. In many ways, it can be thought of as a Jewish version of Ho'oponopono, as the intention is very similar: forgiveness, letting go, release. Now, I usually would not put so much text into a slide deck, but understanding that this will become a permanent record here, I'm offering the vidui that I created for myself, and I'll tell you why I did that. Some versions of the vidui imply that death is a kind of punishment and our death is our final atonement. We could linger on that concept for a long time, but not in this session. Since I don't see death as a failure or a punishment, I chose to create my own vidui that matches my own view. Perhaps you might want to write your own sometime. It goes like this. Holy One of blessings, source of all being and becoming, here I am, naked before you in humbleness and gratitude, fully aware that the measure of my days is in your hands. Whether or not it is my time to leave this body, I ask that my soul receive a complete healing. When it is my time to return to you unfettered by physical form, I ask that my accomplishments here on earth be for a blessing to those who follow, and the record of my many frailties and failings be buried with my body, so that my soul can return to you pure as it was given to me. May my actions in this lifetime, for good or ill, be as compost fed back into the wholeness, so that all I take with me into my soul's next journey is whatever wisdom I have been able to accumulate by your grace. El Shaddai, Hamakom, Anoche, full source. And I would say that all of these are names for the divine. Now and always I lay my life at your feet. Bless the source of all life, and may your abundant blessings nurture and sustain all living beings with shalom. So from this stage, we move to El Malay Rachamim, and there's that word again, God full of compassion. One can imagine in this prayer the sense of the Holy One full of compassion, gathering the departing soul into the womb-like shelter of the very wings of the Shekhinah, the divine indwelling presence. In an atmosphere like this prayer, spoken typically at funerals, graveside, prayer services during the week of Shiva, a tremendous sense of consolation can be created for the mourners, in addition to praying for the soul of the one who is making the transition to the other side. And then we have the mourner's Kaddish. Listen to the sound. Yit Gadal v'yit Gadash Shemei Rabbah. Exalted and hallowed be God's great name. This prayer is in Aramaic, the vernacular of its time. The words have a poetic rhythm to them, which, without even knowing their meaning, have an almost rocking quality that can be very comforting. But what does the prayer really say, and why is it the prayer that we are required to say over and over? For some, it is enormously comforting to recite, even if we don't know what we are saying. We are faced with the responsibility of daily recitation of this prayer, but only in the presence of a minyan, a prayer group of 10 or more. And perhaps that is its greatest power. We are commanded to be together as often as possible to say Kaddish. For the mourners, it is an obligation to not become isolated. And for our friends, it is to make sure that the mourners have a minyan to pray with. For some people, it is very important to recite the mourner's Kaddish every day, perhaps even 3 times a day, especially during Shiva week. Other people may just want to be quiet or find struggling with the language burdensome or even embarrassing. The loss of a loved one can be the ultimate in disempowering experience. So why add yet another layer of feelings of inadequacy when providing Nechama is all about holding a loving, supportive space? What does it mean to pray? Some of us find solace in familiar liturgy. What others need most maybe help with accessing their feelings in a safe place to fall apart. The word Shiva means 7, traditionally the number of days of deep mourning, with burial counting as day 1. A Shiva candle is lit, which typically burns for all of those 7 days. During this first week, there are various customs to assist the mourners in confronting their grief. It is a time to stay home, accept comfort in the form of help with such mundane matters as delivery of food, running errands, watering plants, even walking the dog. There is a custom of covering the mirrors in the house. Some say this is because the souls of the departed are still visible in mirrors. But perhaps it is as simple as not seeing oneself looking unkempt, unshaven, and in the generally scruffy state that we are not only permitted, but encouraged to allow. Shiva calls are encouraged, but visitors should take their cues from the mourners: when time to talk, when to just share quiet time, and when to leave. It is wise to have a gatekeeper, and a notice, perhaps sent by email or posted on the front door, announcing when visiting hours are appreciated. There are so many ways to provide Nechama during Shiva week. Take your lead from the mourners and or the gatekeeper, if there is one, who might actually be the person who answers the door when you arrive. If the mourners demonstrate that conversation is invited, you might start with an opening comment or simply ask about a photograph that is on display. Who are the people in the photograph? What was the occasion? Other times, the most comforting thing to do is simply to hold space or quietly take empty cups to the kitchen if that feels welcome. When my mother died, I really wanted to go for a walk around the land where I was living, but I was concerned about the risk of leaving a candle burning unattended. When I told a friend, she arrived with her lyre to sit not with me, but with the candle. The fresh air and sunshine was so soothing, as was the gentle sound of her playing the lyre and singing, wafting through the windows. My friend listened to what I needed and added her particular sensitivity and skillfulness to meet my need in a beautiful, enriching manner. At the end of Shiva week, it is customary to accompany the mourners for a brief walk around the block or perhaps to a nearby open space. So I've been talking about the Chevra Kadisha, but what is a Chevra Kadisha? The word Chevra, if you've ever heard that song, Shalom Chaverim, it comes from the same place. It basically means community, society, friends, or in Hawaiʻi, you could say ohana or hui. And Kadisha means sacred or holy, or really, honestly, even kapu. We take on particular sacred traditions that we rarely even speak of, except for other members of our hui kapu. Caring for our dead in a sacred manner goes back to the very beginning of our Jewish people. Our ancestor Abraham purchased the cave of Machpelah by the field of Mamre for his wife Sarah when she died. Although the specific practices have changed over the millennia, the dedication persists. Two iconic practices have been carried to the present day. Tahara, the ritual washing, purification, dressing, casketing, and praying over our deceased prior to burial, and Shmirah, guarding and praying over the body from the time of death until burial. It is customary, even essential among Orthodox and conservative communities, to conduct these ceremonies. In recent decades, the practice of Tahara and Shmirah among liberal communities has become more widely adopted. Responses to the COVID pandemic have spawned creative means for perpetuating the tradition. It is inherently Jewish to innovate, reinterpret, and find new ways of responding to basic human needs. Tahara Ruchanit and Shmirah, done at distance, are examples of the ways in which outside pressures and the commitment to preserving the essence of Jewish practice have led to creative new models. Hawaii's inter-island Chevra Kadisha has for the past several years been promoting a resurgence of Chevra Kadisha activities ranging from Tahara and Shmirah to classes in Jewish end-of-life practices and even delivering challah to shut-ins for Shabbat. For someone who is institutionalized, delivering two little battery-operated candles to their tray table on a Friday afternoon and helping them to waken and welcome Shabbat can make all the difference in the world. Nechama does not have to be big and spectacular. It can be something as simple as 5 minutes with a couple of little candles on a Friday afternoon. Similar to the Hawaiian understanding, Jewish mysticism recognizes distinct frequencies of the soul. Though they are sometimes used interchangeably, the neshama is similar to almakua, understood to be the level of soul that is most closely attuned to source. When we light a candle in remembrance of one who is ill, dying, or departed, we are recognizing that the fuel, the flame, and the light that is radiated, even as the wax burns away, are all part of the natural process. How do we keep our beloved departed among us and give ourselves comfort? This photograph is one example. Photographs and a small shrine placed at the trunk of a tree that provided shade for a wedding. You might think of this little shrine as among the wedding guests. The following poem is often recited at the closing of funerals or at graveside in a kind of call and response, with each line ending in "we remember them." If you feel moved to do so, please join in this contemporary Nechama practice. At the rising of the sun and at its going down, we remember them. At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. At the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. At the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them. When we have joy we crave to share, we remember them. When we have achievements that are based on theirs, we remember them. For as long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. The body releases the being and returns to the wholeness of earth. The being returns to the infinite. Even this not having all the answers, can be a source of nechama, of comfort and consolation, if we let it in. And so on that note, I'd love to open this up and see, Jeanette, what you have for us.
Yeah, so we thank you so much, Holly Blue. And hopefully people will share in the chat questions that they have. So let me start with Mimi's question. I understand that the vidui is controversial. Can you talk about that?
I would say that I did in some ways address it already. There are many aspects of the our relationship with death. You know, so many of us see it very differently. I'm very clear that in my understanding of things, death is not a punishment. It is not a failure. We haven't flunked life. As a matter of fact, with my tongue in my cheek, I would even go so far as to say we refer to people as having passed. Not everybody feels that way. For some people, death is an atonement. And the part of the vidui that I wrote that talked about me giving my body back to the earth and taking only my experience with me, and my soul came out of that part where I looked up the word atonement, what it was in Hebrew, and it's something called kapara, that if you take it back far enough, it's almost like burying the hatchet. It's burying something. So I think that that's where the controversy comes from. I hope that's helpful.
Well, Mimi can weigh in if she had other questions. So I had a question.
Go.
I just begin to scratch the surface of the prayers and traditions. And it sounds like, for those of us that would like to care well for people, whether it's in hospice or palliative care, or people that are in long-term care facilities, I believe that I've seen a handout somewhere so that people can in advance be indicating which traditions would be important for them, because that would sound very useful. And then it sounds, though, also having learned from you that different congregations would have different beliefs or different types of prayer. So can you talk a little, I'm thinking for myself of, how can we help to, to have, we're all about preventing crisis. So we want people to, talk about their traditions, help us get ready, all of that. So please, so please talk about that. What can we be doing?
Yeah. So I'm actually very glad that you brought that up. And there is something else I will endeavor to remember. And if I don't, please come after me on it. It's a little booklet that a friend of mine, Rabbi Aviva Ehrlich from Southern California, put together. I believe it's called Jewish Ritual Wishes at End of Life or something like that. And it's a beautiful, each page has a particular tradition and explains it. And not only that, then it leaves a space for the person to write what their particular desires are for that stage and who they want to perform that particular task. So help me to remember it, because there's a whole lot going on. There's a whole lot that's been written, and there is definitely that bit about there's this old joke about 2 Jews, 3 opinions, and my response is, that's all. There's so many different ways of expressing our Jewish identity, and that is definitely a challenge for chaplains that are stepping into a situation where they don't know the people. And even if you do, as a cemeterian, that's the word, cemeterian, someone who takes care of a cemetery, every time I meet a family for whether they're simply doing their pre-planning and buying a plot, or if it's a time of need and we're planning planning a funeral in a cemetery is a joint project between the family, the mortuary, the clergy, the grave diggers, me in this picture, everybody working together because it really, a funeral is sacred theater, and you only get one chance to do it right, and each one is different. And so it is a challenging thing, and I would say it's even almost an art form to really be able to parse out what's going to, because one person may absolutely require a certain thing and another maybe. I took a challah into the home of a friend's house, a Jewish friend, on Friday afternoon. Well, she's a Buddhist and she was not pleased with me. Who knew? We do the best we can. As a matter of fact, that's pretty much the motto of the. If we all had T-shirts for the Chevra Kadisha, what would they say? What would the motto on the shirt be? It would be, "You do the best you can."
Okay, well, thank you. Good. I hope everybody has that wish moving forward. There's some resources that are being put into the chat. So Alice Lockman shared that on sha'aloha.com that there's my Jewish wishes under life cycles. And then Dan Weiss shared a choral rendition of the We Remember poem. Then nice, Mimi Lynn said, in Jewish culture, there's always more than one answer. And then there's also some information on the Hawaii Inter-Island Hevra Kadisha about resources. So that's also, so it's rabbimaui.com. So folks can copy that as well. And I did want to say one of the things that Alice Lockman put together over the weekend was the beginning of a list on Jewish resources in Hawaii. And I would say if people would like to get that, they should send me an email and I'll share that with them. And then as we compile resources and link to different things from the Kokua Mau list, we can also be linking with that, but I would never share resources like that without the express permission of people. But thank you to Alice for pulling some of that together. And I could see how that will be a good resource for all sorts of folks involved. I did want to share that there is there was a question before about Jewish cemetery, because you talked about different traditions. So I was sharing about Abraham's Garden. That is something that Don and Sandy Armstrong run here on Oahu. People feel free to put into the chat if you're aware of other cemeteries, but I'm putting that one in as a start. And this one is listed in the listing of Kokua Mau mortuaries and cemeteries. So if there's other cemeteries that are there, please let us know and we can be including that. So we are all about sharing the resources as best we can. So I think most of these are about questions. Let me just see what some other questions were that had come up from other people. Oh, so you had mentioned a number of prayers and they are being performed at a different time. So I think that, so if I can imagine if you're caring for someone who's not from your faith tradition, and in this case, so Jewish, but it would be with that, in Hawaii, we have such a wonderfully diverse culture. What's the best way to figure out how to do this well? And like you had mentioned, 4 different prayers. I think you said the vidui you would do yourself, and if you can't do it, someone else would do. But just how do we do this in the right way, as best we can, as you said?
Yeah, as best we can. Well, the good news is that we're not operating in a vacuum. The more challenging news is that we have so many choices. Part of it has to do with really beginning by understanding where a person lands in terms of their Jewish observance, whether there's somebody who is really familiar with Jewish practices or whether they don't know anything. We're going through a period in human history where there are so many Jews who are unaffiliated, and I think we're still looking at more intergenerational suffering that was brought on by the Holocaust. To be perfectly honest, there was so much disruption and also just so much despair that many people really lost touch with what was simply how community was before. And so there's a lot of disillusionment going on for some people, and they really don't even approach a Jewish practice at all until, for example, when somebody is dying or has died. One of the things that's going on, and you mentioned it in my bio at the beginning, I'm part of a organization. The acronym is JADE. It stands for Jewish Association for Death Education, and in fact, Rick Light, our Santa Fe representative here, is also part of JADE. And JADE, or Rick, it would be helpful if you could drop that link into the chat for people was one of the things that I didn't get together. But we're working very diligently on finding ways of making core Jewish practice and understanding available to people who are approaching it almost like a dictionary or an encyclopedia, and trying to find their way. Because I think in a lot of ways, Jeanette, that these are the people that you're asking about or for, because if somebody belongs to a congregation, they have an infrastructure, they have a rabbi, they have a way, if you will, and sound Mandalorian for a moment. It's the way. So it's the people who are, as we say, unaffiliated. Thank you, Rick. That so that pick up that link, because it's a brand new baby, still wet behind the ears, but we're tremendously excited about what we're putting together there. Other answers, I would say you can always go online and do a search for something, and as we call this person of indeterminate gender, Reb Google. You can find all sorts of things and maybe read a half a different websites and find half a different approaches, and ask yourself, well, what resonates in my kishkas? What feels like it makes sense to me? That's why I wrote my own vidui. And in fact, there's a website out there, maybe Rick knows that one as well. Somebody's put together a whole website on different viduis that have been collected, and some of them are very poetic and euphemistic, and some of them are much more, boots on the ground. And how's that? Does that help? Thank you, Rick. Yes, Allison Jordan, vidui variations. Fabulous. And notice her spelling, vidui. So I did just a quick little technical aside here. The Hebrew language uses a different alphabet. And so when we're saying something like, for example, vidui, Allison spells it with a Y on the end. I spell it with a Y, or she spells it with an I on the end. I spell it with a Y on the end. That's just one example. How many different ways are there of spelling Hanukkah? And they're all right. So okay, Jeanette, great. You were going to say.
No, this is a really good start. And there's also all sorts of things that people are putting into the chat as resources that we'll be able to pull together. And I really appreciate that. Things from from Maui and some other places as well. So, and I did finally catch that Reb Google. Thank you. That was, I heard that one. And then I'd love to hear, so a couple questions. Can a non-Jewish person, like a hospice care person, help with a vidui?
If you're the one who's there and it's time, what do you think? It's kind of like to vidui or not to vidui. Are you really going to withhold? Okay, I've got an even better one. There was years and years ago, I was complaining to one of my mentors. And she listened patiently for a long time. And then she finally said to me, are you telling me that your fear of mediocrity is keeping you from acting? If you're the only person who can be there with that person in that moment to offer that vidui, do you think God cares if you're Jewish?
Okay.
What you're doing for that person in that moment. It's right. Like showing up with those little electric tea lights on Friday afternoon.
Right. Well, for me, there's so many other questions now that come, and I hope that other people on this call are, like me, interested in learning more about the traditions. For many years, I've said I think that the sitting Shiva and the Jewish traditions about getting together immediately and spending a week is really wonderful. And I find the traditions that we have at the moment, most, in the United States, but Hawaii too, oh, we're going to have a service in 6 months. Terrible. And so somebody also sent me a note. Can you talk a little bit more about what sitting Shiva involves? And I will say to people that the book, When Death Visits a Jewish House, and I'll put the link in here again, is great. I used it yesterday. A friend of mine's mother died, and we looked up care for mourners. What could we be doing? And that's where I learned no flowers. And there will be probably a place to send donations to honor the person, but I'll put the link in here in a minute so that folks, so thank you to the generous person that donated the booklets to Chevra Kadisha. And then Bristol has offered to send them out to people if you share your contact information with them. So thank you again. Thank you to our community for coming together.
Really, really.
Yeah, and if you could talk a little bit about what does it mean to sit Shiva?
What does it mean to sit Shiva? Wow.
Sorry, was that
Well,
like
there's
a
no,
14
it's
week
fine.
course?
No, it's well, it's a lifetime course, to be honest. But again, it's going to depend on a particular family's customs. For some people, well, I'll give you an example. So I'm married into a Londoner from an Orthodox family, and so I've got a lot of Orthodox in-laws. And when my mother-in-law and my father-in-law each passed, of blessed memory, we did a week of Shiva, and it was an amazing, amazing experience. Sometimes rather exhausting, because there we were in the middle of Hendon, which is in North London, and it's a serious Jewish, very observant enclave. And 3 times a day, the house was filling up with people from the neighborhood. Some we knew, some we didn't know, to do a full-on prayer service 3 times a day. My father-in-law died in the middle of summer. In the middle of summer, night is about that long, so waiting until you could do the evening service was like, I want to go to bed, but the food that just kept pouring into the house, and all of it kosher, all of it, like, really knowing what that family needed and wanted. I think they did something, I think it was called Meal Train or something like that, where it was put out very specifically what that family needed. It was wonderful in a lot of ways. And I'll tell you, by the end of those 7 days, we were ready for it to not be 8 days long. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it might just be like really simple. A different personality with different needs, different ways of expressing their Jewish sensibility, might only do Shiva for one night or two, and it might be at the synagogue, or it might be at the family's home. And some people don't really, especially in, as I like to say, the far diaspora of California here. I realize you're even Sof Ma'arav, you're even farther diaspora, but it's really important to understand, if you don't get anything else about Shiva, is understanding that you're stepping into the home of people who have just lost a beloved, and they may be very fragile, and they may have it in their bones that if somebody comes to my house, I'm supposed to be providing hospitality. No, not during Shiva week. You come, you bring food, you bring the right food, you find out what's the right food. You don't bring a Costco chicken if the people are vegans. It's like part of Nechama, part of comfort, is to find out enough about that person that what is going to be comforting to them. Maybe there's somebody who lives around the corner from you who you've never met, and you find out that they're having a Shiva minyan. Find out who they know and ask them, what can I bring that would be comforting to them? That's part of it too. It's like, as how many of us are there? There's like 42 of us on the screen right now. There's 42 different things that would be comforting. Some we'll have in common, some we won't. Bring chocolate to my house, just saying.
Yeah, no, so in terms of also, there were some good questions. What shouldn't we do? When shouldn't we visit? Are there ways behaving respectfully, things not to do? Is it okay to visit if you're not Jewish? I think I just heard that from you.
Yeah.
Is there like a person who's the coordinator kind of
Every situation is
depends?
different. Yeah, every situation is different. Ideally, you have a friend who acts as a gatekeeper, as I was discussing, somebody who really pay attention. I remember one night we went to a friend's house. They were having a Shiva minyan, and a bunch of people came in who didn't understand, and they started acting like it was a party. Sometimes it's challenging because you may not have seen these friends in a long time, and people are coming in because everybody knows so and so. That one where there's that little person in the center of the circle, and oh, I didn't know you knew so and so, and you're happy to see them, and you want to like be hugging and all of that, when that's not what's going on there now. It's like shh, and so one of the things that you can do, one of the things that you can take on if you see a situation that's starting to spin out of control, and especially watch the people who are the principal mourners, and I'll talk about principal mourners in just a moment, but keep an eye on those people that the Shiva Minyan is focused around, and look at how they're doing. And if you see them just retreating more and more and more and more, take a little initiative and, be the border collie that gets everybody out the door, because I bet there's not a person on this call who hasn't been through some deep grief at some point in their lives. It's exhausting. You feel raw. Noises are really loud. You don't understand things that make perfect sense 2 days ago. Your brain is just like left the building. Take care of people. Just really fundamental human. Take care of people. We know how to do this. We do know how to do this. We think we've forgotten because we live in such a consumer society that, something as simple as, do you know how to make coffee the way you like it, or do you have to go to Starbucks to get what you want? We need to reclaim these really simple, fundamental humannesses. We can do this.
Yeah, thank you. Alice wrote, the meal of consolation after a funeral is a precious tradition honored by the community.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
And what do you bring? You don't bring a lot of spicy foods. You don't bring a lot of it. The very traditional foods to bring, and they have a symbolic meaning: hard-boiled eggs, lentils. They're both round. They symbolize the cycle of life, and all of us. Obviously, eggs are just like something new is being symbolized here. But they're also pretty digestible. I remember when my father, of blessed memory, passed away, there was too much spicy food and it just went bad in the refrigerator. Couldn't eat it. I was eating hard-boiled eggs and challah.
Yeah, I think I would also be wondering if somebody keeps kosher, then to be concerned about what to be
what you can
bringing.
bring. Yeah, if somebody keeps kosher, you can bring fruit that hasn't been prepared, it hasn't been cut. You can always bring fresh fruit.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Very simple, very simple. No,
I appreciate
that.
But
don't like prep it. Don't make a nice
just bring
compote. Just bring it on something beautiful that they're not going to have to remember who it belonged to and get it back to them. Maybe get a brown paper bag and fashion it into a basket. Something like that, so they don't have to worry about it.
Obviously, you have skills I do not have. But okay, I get the point. Yeah. Okay. Actually, so a couple questions. Another wonderful comment from Alice. What about covering the mirrors? Can a non-Jewish person do this for someone who has just died in a care center? And actually, I was thinking. So for people who are in a more who live in a facility, the candle on the plate on a Friday night is just such a lovely idea. And again, it could be one of those little electric candles, but wouldn't that be wonderful?
Two of them.
Yes, I heard you say two. And I was thinking, oh, okay, because we lit some candles on Friday night, two of them. Thank you. So I just also something to be thinking about in terms of if someone is being cared for to whatever setting that they're in. So a non-Jewish person, that was the question. Can they hang, cover the mirrors? And
I can't imagine why not.
Okay.
And of course, if that person's in a care home, typically care homes move people out fairly quickly after they've died. It's very interesting. Some of them, I've seen care homes where when the person died, everyone was told, and the residents were told and had an opportunity to like line the halls as that person's body was being wheeled out. There are others that it happens in the dead of night when nobody's noticing. There are others that it's just part of the day, like everything else that's going on. And if you happen to be there, you happen to be there. It's a care home is a community of sorts. And each community has its own personality and its own mayor, if you will, and does things their own way.
Yeah. Jill is giving the advice that when you try and buy Passover things in Hawaii, this, there's kosher foods available in regular markets. Safeway has a Jewish section. And there's different types of kosher, as I've learned. It's she was saying look for the K and a circle on the package, but again, Rabbi Google can help with all of those kinds of things as well. So, and yes, and the U and the circle, I was going to say yesterday we were looking at exactly this. So I've found so much in doing this now, especially with you over the last couple of years with Alice and things we did with Trudy Wong. There's so much great information on the web and so much great information. And so I hope that people who are not Jewish and are caretakers and caregivers would like to know more, please let me know. And then there's a number of Jewish people on this call. So I really hope that there can now be, that they can be helping I started with hospices, palliative care providers, any sort of facilities to be doing this well. And I think people really want to learn and to do this well. As I said, everybody, everybody I know wants to be a compassionate, caring presence and to do the right thing, regardless of the person's tradition. So especially now, we're learning about Jewish traditions. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder even if one of the things that the Chevra Kadisha might take on, and of course that's easy for me to say from a nice safe distance. Sorry, Alice. But one of the things that you might consider doing is like forming a study group of people who come from various streams of Judaism and because I'm seeing lots of Jewish names on the screen here, and so everybody's going to have their piece. And it might be possible to put together some kind of a source book. Really, if you haven't seen Nani Kakumu, it's wonderful because it's not just like one long read. It's almost more like a catalog. It's a bit like the When Death Visits a Jewish Home. I feel like we need another When Death Will Visit a Jewish Home. We could really use a companion to that as simply and succinctly as that book does it for after death. That we have one that's for the preparation.
Great. Well, hopefully, again, as you say, I recognize some some of the folks on this call, and I'm so glad that everyone has come, and that I really hope that this can be an ongoing conversation, and again, helping us to care well for people in our community. I don't want to stop the Jewish conversation necessarily, but there was a question about the green burials, and so there, and I'm interested how that fits in with the Jewish traditions. But
Perfectly.
yeah, would you mind speaking a little bit to that, and if you know about green burial options in Hawaii?
Yeah, I don't really know about green burial options in Hawaii. That the last couple of years I've been so busy putting curriculum together, and honestly, since COVID, I think I've been to San Francisco twice. I think it would be really interesting to see what is going on over there and what is possible over there. And I would love, just as I would love to, however I can be in supportive of having a study group over in Hawaii to put something together, about being Jewish in Hawaii and what that looks like on a Chevra Kadisha level. It would also be very interesting to see what's possible over there. So the way I like to say it is that from the soil horizon down, Jewish burial is really pretty inherently green. Um, it When we care for the body and dress the body and so on, and the casket, all natural materials, really intended to break down. A dear friend of mine, Rabbi Meir Elinsky, we were talking one day about there's this concept of the storehouse of the soul on the other side, and that in the same way there's a place in the ground where the bodies have their equivalent to that, where our bodies are prepared in a way that we nurture the soil. This 12 module course that Jewish and Green that we put together last year is very specifically about that. Above the surface of the ground, there's plenty of Jewish cemeteries around that use chemical fertilizers and pesticides and gas-powered lawnmowers and things like that. Those are not green practices, if you will. I kind of hesitate to use the word green, so I'm using it advisedly in this conversation right now. I prefer to say natural burial, but then what does that mean? The point is to do no further damage to the earth after we're gone. And honestly, so there's another Jewish value. I think in the handouts there's one called Holy Friends, and address some Jewish values in that one. And one of them is Pekuach Nefesh, and Pekuach Nefesh is a very highly held value, which means preserving life. So here's a little quick sidebar on Jewish values. Two of the Jewish values that come to bear after life are Pekuach Nefesh and Kavod Hamet. Kavod Hamet refers to respecting the sanctity of the body. So if at all possible, we avoid autopsy, we avoid embalming and anything like that. We really want to return the body to the ground, to the earth, in as minimally invasive and, in fact, very lovingly cared for. The ceremony of Tahara is an extraordinary experience. I've been doing it since the 90s. And to be the person who washes and dresses and cares for and picks up and cradles and caskets the body for the last time, when at some point, heaven only knows how long ago, somebody picked up that newborn baby and it was tiny. It just puts you so in touch with the great mystery. And there's so much love and care and liturgical comfort. I mean, it's heavy on the Nechama. So all of this is Kavod Hamet, honoring the body of the deceased. Okay. Very highly held value. What is an even more highly held value than that? Pikuach nefesh, preserving life. So it's pikuach nefesh that says it's okay to do organ and tissue donation, even though that's invading the body because it's keeping somebody else alive, right? So we're talking about values and how they offset one another. Pikuach nefesh, a very highly held. What I've come to understand is that I will be, I'm not the only person living in this body. There's more microbial action. There is more microbial action going on in this body without me than there are stars in the sky. We have these amazing things that we're walking around in and with. When I started learning about gut microbiome and gut health, I actually went through a day where I was standing in front of my refrigerator with the door open, looking down at my belly and going, what do you guys want to eat? You know, realizing I was not taking care of it. I'm like the sovereign of the realm here, and I'm just, I'm being like the mean old slumlord to all of this life that is trying to keep me alive. And so, if for no other reason, I realize now how important it is to take after, if I'm the star of the show, right? Well, when I leave the stage crew does what the stage crew does. It's going to take it down as rapidly as it possibly can. So why wouldn't I support that so that all of that life goes back into what is the gut microbiome of our environment, the soil. The soil is the gut microbiome of our ecosystem. And so how we care for it is critically important. So if we think of pikuach nefesh in those terms, we're going to be very careful how we do burials, how we care for the body after somebody dies.
Okay, wow. There's always so much. I love it how you say, well, and then we could do the next 14-week course on all of this. So it's really fabulous. I so appreciate that. Good. I see that people are already, a couple of people have had to go, but I did put into the chat in case there's other questions, and that people, now is the time to share. Otherwise, we can't thank you enough for spending time. And I really hope that folks want to carry on this conversation. And again, how do we care well in our community? We have a very loving, kind community, and everyone I work with is very committed to caring well for people. And as you see from the number of people that came today, and a number of people wrote to say, oh shoots, I can't come, is it being recorded? I think there is a lot of interest, so I look forward to this ongoing. And just to be clear with folks, we are going to take the recording from today. It will be edited, and then we're going to put it up on the Kokua Mau website. And then it is the intention to create a page. So we're going to put up some of these resources that Holly Blue has shared, as well as Alice, and a number of people put things in the website. So just, full disclosure, this is not happening today. However, if anybody has a crucial need for these handouts, you could send me an email and I'll forward them on to you. But otherwise, this will be under construction, especially after all of these great resources today. And I think it's also fair to say, the more we start, then it will be, we're certainly learning a lot as we go.
Yeah.
So I don't see any more questions. So Holly Blue, I would really like to thank you again for this not only informative and informational session, but very moving. Thank you very much for coming and sharing with us today.
Well, and I really want to say mahalo to everyone. If you hadn't showed up, I wouldn't have gone through the experience of putting together the material that I just did. And it was a rich experience for me. I hope it was meaningful for you as well. And I would love to keep going and keep sharing and keep supporting what's going on in Hawaii, because, certainly Jeanette and Alice knows it matters a lot to me. And so
Great.
mahalo for being there and staying strong.
Well, again, thank you, Holly Blue. So in finishing, on behalf of the Inter-Island Hevra Kadisha and Kokua, we thank you. And thank you to everyone for sharing their time. And we look forward into ongoing communication. So as you say, and to all of us, be strong. Okay. Aloha, everyone.
Malama pono. Malama pono.
Malama pono.